Oh, there we go. We are set. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is YEG/Edmonton Shaper State of the City podcast, episode number 2. Yay! It's not that exciting. My name is Iman Khan. I'm your host for tonight. Over the course of the series, as I mentioned, we hope to get to know each individual, their journey, and why they chose to make Edmonton home, as well as their thoughts on current events. Tonight's guest is a very famous individual in the Edmonton community. He's a familiar face in Edmonton's STEM scene and also the chief operating officer of the Telus World of Science. Please welcome our esteemed guest, Mr. Steve Baker. Yay! Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Perfect. How's your day so far?
It's been great. It's been great. All things considered, in the world that we're living in right now, it's good.
Do you feel like this is going to turn into like the Walking Dead type of situation?
Yeah.
Maybe, I Am Legend, or maybe something like the movie Contagion?
Well,
Which type of fiction is this going towards?
it's interesting you mention this because actually just last night I watched the movie Contagion on Netflix. I've not seen it yet, and I've been hearing a number of things about it. It's eerily similar to the world in which we're living in. A lot of parallels to it, anyway. So, but it's you say about the Living Dead. It's interesting because I have found numerous times when I'm leaving from my home, the neighborhood I live in, and I pull it onto a major throughway in the city. Just the other day, I'm looking ahead and behind me, not a single car to be seen. This was about, Sunday morning, about just after 8 o'clock in the morning, when I'm heading out to go meet a buddy to go for a long run, and no cars. And I'm driving down to go meet him in the river valley, and I see like maybe a dozen cars. It's just like hardly anybody. And yes, it's Sunday morning, 8:30 in the morning, but still. And then where we're running, and we covered 30 kilometers on our run around the city through the river valley and on some of the city roads. And we said to each other, we have seen certainly less than 200 cars, and possibly less than 100 cars driving around. There's just nobody out and about, which is a good thing. In fairness too, considering the circumstances with the whole COVID crisis. So,
I mean, you never know. Like, it's better nobody there rather than if there are too many people, then the, the secret police are going to come out of the woodwork, grab you, be like, "Hey, you get a fine, and you get a fine."
Exactly.
Like it's giving out fines, right? So
yeah. And I'll state for the record that we were very, very much socially distancing running. We could hardly hear each other when we would try to talk. So we stay far enough away from each other, but we still get out there and run together, this buddy of mine and myself. So we're pretty much relatively secluded to a certain group anyway. So
don't worry, there aren't enough people watching, so no one's gonna rat you out.
Yeah, but we do legit.
No, that's definitely good to hear because jokes aside, a lot of young people in and around the Edmonton area, they definitely look up to individuals like yourself, your colleagues, our mutual friend Stephen Knight, and many other individuals. So we definitely have to make sure the message is loud and clear. If you're watching this far flung into the future, yay, humanity has survived. If you're watching this in the more immediate future, then yeah, pay attention to government guidelines, pay attention to what the city says, pay attention to what Dr. Dina Hinshaw of AHS and what everyone else is saying. Maintain at least 2 meters apart from everybody else. Don't go outside unnecessarily. And yeah, be safe and secure at all times.
Yeah.
That's the corporate message.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're not getting paid for anything, so don't worry. We'll do that one for you, City of Edmonton. So, Steve, tell us about yourself. Who is Mr. Baker? Where are you from? Are you from here? Are you from somewhere else?
Born and raised in Edmonton. My parents are from Europe. Just a little bit further background. My mother's from south of France. My father from London, England. And interestingly enough, he was born and raised in the district of Edmonton, London, England. There's a small district there that's called Edmonton. I didn't know that until I was in my adult years that I knew that he was from that area. And just by chance, they immigrated here back in the late 50s and came to Canada and ended up in Edmonton and then stayed. And I was born in the 60s, the youngest of 4 children. And
careful, you don't want to give away your age.
I'm old. I'm 56, so I don't care. I embraced the number, but so I was born and raised in Edmonton here. Spent my entire life here. I've had opportunities to go to other cities and for work and for varied opportunities, and I've chosen to stay here. Raised a family here, and I have 4 children, 3 of which are adult age, and have one of which has their own family, and both, I guess technically all have their own families because they're either married or engaged. and then I have a younger daughter too, second marriage, so one of those. So, but and then happily have a 4-year-old granddaughter too. So yeah, I'm very fortunate. I consider myself very fortunate to have had the opportunity to be born and raised in the city of Edmonton, and had the opportunity to have traveled a reasonable bit around the world through personal travel, and a lot through a great deal through work travel. Has got me around the world to meet a lot of very interesting people and see a lot of really cool places too. But I still like coming back to Edmonton.
Yeah, I mean, even earlier on when you mentioned Edmonton as part of London, right? I believe that's the place that the city of Edmonton that we're in was named after. Like when what's his face, Anthony Henday. So not the highway, but
Yeah,
the fur trader who came
yeah,
with the Hudson Bay Company. He
yeah.
named Port Edmonton after Edmonton in the UK. So it's
I didn't
fascinating.
know that. I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I
Yeah,
read the history of Edmonton like the other day. That's why it's like super fresh in my mind.
yeah, yeah. Didn't know that piece. Do now. But yeah, so that's with me, and um, so I've made my career here. My through my working years has always obviously then been in Edmonton, and I've got a lot of great friends in the city here, a lot of work colleagues and friends, and a lot of colleagues too that through work and associates who have become very good friends too. And I consider myself extremely fortunate in that. You mentioned earlier Stephen Knight. I've known Stephen since he was a young fellow, young teenager, I think, and his father, Bill, is one of my really good friends. Admire the man
Oh wow.
immensely, and he and his wife Grace have done incredible things for the city of Edmonton, and I'm proud to know them, proud to call them friends and work colleagues, and Stephen equally. He impresses the heck out of me. He's a really interesting young man. So
Yeah, one of my favorite qualities about Steven is like he's super hardworking. He's
yeah,
balanced. He knows how to remain calm in difficult situations, and that's seldom found, especially in our age demographic, right? Like you have a lot of people who they're still working their first jobs. They've never really managed too many people, and in his case, dozens of employees,
yeah,
his own companies and stuff like that. Like I definitely see a bright future ahead for him.
okay,
And for
yeah.
our viewers, just so you know, Stephen is our curator, the person in charge of our little hub in Edmonton.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Steve, you were saying?
Yeah, no, yeah, no, and I agree 100%. Like it's really cool, and you're right. Your reference to him about being really calm. He is extremely that way. I think that's a really good trait of Stevens. So yeah, so it's folks like them. I find myself incredibly lucky to have through work and through personal life have met some really great people, some really cool people that have influenced my life in a very, very positive way. And they don't have to be older than me either. They can be very much younger than me. In fact, my
Oh,
children have probably influenced me the most. So it's, yeah, I'm a fortunate guy that way. I consider myself very lucky. People have said, well, luck comes with, in fact, an old boss of mine said, luck comes when opportunity and preparedness cross paths. Very true. I can understand the rationale behind that. But, right place, right time, call it what you will. I've been pretty blessed with my life too. So
do you feel that as someone who was not only like so well traveled and educated, do you feel like the fact that your parents also grew up in different countries that only kind of elevated your experiences? So it sounds like like you're a child. I guess your upbringing was very culturally enriched. Is that fair to say?
to a degree it was. It's interesting you say that because I know people have asked me, say, okay, your mom's from France, can you speak French? And I can't. Which is a really sad. I know it's terrible. It's awful. It's awful. And we took French in school, but I didn't retain it, quite honestly. I'd have a tough time being able to order French toast at the best of times. But no, it's that's one thing that I'm extremely disappointed in, that I cannot speak French or another language for that matter. But you would think that there maybe be more of a cultural infusion from my parents' backgrounds into my life. And I don't feel that there was as much as there could have been. And I state part of that in 2002 when I remarried. My wife and I went to France for our honeymoon, and went there and stayed actually the first few days in an apartment that was owned by a childhood friend of my mother's. And she had the place; it was empty, it was furnished and whatnot, but she just let us stay there. So anyway, I got there and just checked in with my mother to let her know, yeah, we got here safe and sound. I said, I got to ask you a question. She said, what? I said, why? She said, why what? I said, why did you move from here? This place is beautiful. And nothing again against Edmonton, but it was just, I'd not been to France before that, and I was just blown away in 24 hours about the cultural richness of that place. And I wish I would have had more of that embedded into my life to have an understanding as I grew up. And then there was the same sort of spin, if you will, from my father's upbringing. And I think we had a little bit more of the British infusion into our lives, because my mother didn't have family here. My father's two of his sisters had moved to Edmonton as well when my parents immigrated here. And and there was a bit of a spin of that. We certainly heard more about that. My grandparents from my father's side and some of my aunts and uncles came over as well too, and I got to know more of my cousins. So there was more of a touch on it too. And then of course I grew up on Monty Python. So.
Yeah, it's fascinating you mentioned the fact that the culture within a lot of these old world European countries, right? So
Right.
if we look at the history of, let's say, the French capital in Paris, right? So if we go back like 130 years, Paris was an absolute dump. It was literally slums everywhere.
Yeah.
But then they bulldozed the entire city and rebuilt it, right? So that I once had a fascinating conversation about at what point should the government step in and bulldoze and remove dilapidated housing and build something new? Because if we still had those slums there, would people really visit for that? Or I mean, let's be honest here. A lot of the cultural institutions and stuff like that, it got damaged over the years, and then the world wars happened and stuff like that. But the fact that France does have the grand boulevards, right? They do
Yeah.
have La Défense and all of these fascinating, like really, really gorgeous areas, especially
Absolutely.
places like Paris, right? So, I mean, that's why we go there. So, one of the things I'd love to ask you later on is like, how can we, especially, living in a small prairie town, how can we gradually develop cultural icons and like, how can we place ourselves on the map? Like, people know we're here in Canada at least. But once you go further beyond that, it's like, people might have heard of the Calgary Stampede or Formula One in Montreal or somewhere, but how can we kind of create the culture of the city, right? So,
Right.
but before we get there, please tell us a bit more about your childhood. Like, I mean, did you do? I'm assuming you did high school here. Did you attend the U of A or Grand Mac or?
Yeah. No, I went through my through high school. I graduated from Mallory High School with a really cool group of people that I stay in touch with. We've had our many reunions, and it's hard to believe we've been out of school 3 times over what we were in school for, and but still stay connected with a number of folks that I went to high school with, which is really cool. Some of which who do live in the city here, and some who are extended out. And of course, through the world of social media, there's been greater opportunity for that connection. And yes, I did go to University of Alberta. I graduated with got an MBA, went to the executive MBA program actually, and enjoyed that with the School of Business there. Had a really amazing experience with the U of A MBA program. I had an incredibly good cohort of people people again who are friends of mine still, and they certainly influenced my whole journey through the MBA program, as did of course the profs. But
Shout out.
yeah, big time. I really enjoyed that experience. As painful as it was, because as you know, when you're doing a master's program, it can be pretty tough. But it changed me immensely, and I think it shaped me in a different way, and it helped me grow in a lot of ways during the time, because I said I did the executive MBA program, so I did it in my adult years, not that long ago, and during which time I half jokingly say that my wife became a single parent because I was either working, traveling for work, or I was in class or studying for class. And for 2 years of my life, it was that experience. And I used to somewhat jokingly say, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, and I would wish it on everybody. But you have to be able to, dive right into it. As it is right now, my eldest daughter, who's a school teacher in the city, and she's working on her master's. She's working, but right now during the circumstance, she's working from home as a teacher. But she's doing her master's in education, focusing herself on kids with autism, and kids on the spectrum. And that. So it's really cool. So I'm seeing what she's doing. She's doing a different version of what I did too. So yeah, from a perspective of schooling, right through and through here in the city of Edmonton, and what else can I tell you, from things from me, I know I've stayed relatively active in my life. I became a father at a pretty young age. That's one thing that certainly sits as a bit of a trademark to me. As I said, I have 3 adult age children in their 30s. I was a father. Believe it or not, my eldest son came home on my 19th birthday. So
Oh,
I had
wow.
kids early. Yeah, I had 3 kids by the time I was 23, and don't regret it. We all grew up together. It was fantastic. It was really an amazing experience. I wouldn't change that at all. And my eldest son, he's 37. He lives out in Vancouver, and he and his other half, and they've got a beautiful home out there that they're actually redeveloping right now. And my youngest son lives in the city here too, with his fiance. And as I say, my eldest daughter and her husband, and my granddaughter live in Edmonton here. And it's cool to watch them as they develop their lives too, and the journeys they've taken. As I said, they certainly impacted my life, and shaped me in many, many ways. Dare I say it, especially when I went through my divorce with from their mother back 20 odd years ago. And you learn a lot of things about yourself and about the way that life can treat a person, if you will. So, and then I was fortunate enough to get remarried, and then met my wife, remarried, and then we have a 14-year-old daughter. So, who keeps me? I used to say she's either going to age me incredibly fast or keep me young. So I think there's a little bit of a mix on there. She tries to age me pretty fast sometimes, but we still play a lot together.
But children are a blessing in many ways, right? Like, I
Exactly.
mean, even if sometimes they get on people's nerves, it's like
Mhm.
like what else is life really for, right?
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. Folks that don't have children and choose that path, I don't begrudge them that one little bit. But like I said, I wouldn't change anything for a second, because I consider myself really, really fortunate. I've got 4 really amazing children. Um, you know, the eldest ones would say, "I'm my child. You're always my child." But 4 amazing children who have are very different but very alike in certain ways too. And that's a
Right.
good thing. And I'm extremely proud of each of them. And yeah, they're doing some really cool things. My eldest son, as an example, he he's, as I say, he lives out in Vancouver, and he's got his own general contracting firm. And but he was a professional mountain bike rider. He was a professional BMX rider. And he grew up racing BMX bikes from a young age, and went to the worlds and became nationals. He won and things like that. And that was kind of a bandwagon of things we got really connected with. And he took a real big passion that he had in life and shaped it into something for himself, and made his way up to Vancouver, and was invited out there, did a lot of coaching and stuff with kids. He's traveled all over the world doing mountain bike demos, which I think is super cool. I'd always said he will live far longer than me because his stress factor is minimal. But then he opened up his general contracting firm. So that's changed for him anyway. Yeah, so it's elevated. It's all right. But he's a cool guy. And it's really coal to see what he's doing. And him and his other half, they're renovating in Jen are renovating a house that they bought out there right now. In fact, he sends me pictures on it today. But
Yeah.
yeah, I
You know,
have to think, as I sit there, always when people ask me about my life, I talk a lot about my kids, because so much of my life has been focused around my kids. And I know, like I said, growing up with them, and just enjoying a lot of life together. And my eldest daughter and I, we get to run a lot together, and that's one thing I'm quite into. And she's gotten into running herself, and do a lot of adventure racing, or trail racing and ultra racing and stuff like that. And yeah, it's fun stuff anyway.
I mean, if you don't mind me asking,
Yeah.
just for many of our younger viewers, because they span a bit of a spectrum, what was it like raising children? And I guess if I'm getting the timelines correct, this would be kind of late 80s,
Early
90s.
82. My youngest son, my eldest son was born in 82, and then yeah, 82, 85, 80, 88, early 88.
What was
So
the city like back then? I mean, I'm sure there were far less people. There weren't as many cultural and other institutions and
yeah,
programs and stuff. Like, what was it
yeah,
like?
yeah. It was different, but it was what we knew then too. Keeping in fairness, I don't know what the population base was then. It'd be worth actually, I should look up sometime. I would hazard a guess in about 82, the population base was probably sitting scratching 700,000, I would think, maybe a little more than that. I could be wrong, but I don't think it would be much more than seven and change. From a cultural perspective, yeah, we didn't have as many of the things going on right now. I remember through their lives, things like the Fringe, coming around the early stage of their lives, particularly with my youngest son. I think probably the Fringe is probably in its early version of that, and same with the Folk Fest soon thereafter. And the festival city that Edmonton has become known as, when you talk about one of these things worldwide, we've got a pretty good stake in that. They didn't exist as much then. You did different stuff. You just did different things. And again, I think back to then, what did we do? Well, we spent a lot of time, like I said, with my son's BMX racing. We did a lot of traveling around associated to that. But we did a lot of park stuff and that. It was just different. We engaged differently in the community. We engaged a lot in the neighborhood, much like how I grew up. When you watch these movies from back when, the kids were outside playing out in the streets and doing things with their friends. You got on your bikes and you rode around all over the place. You're on your skateboard. You went all over the place. We made the outdoors playground. Keeping in mind, I'm of a generation that I remember when we got a color TV. I remember exactly. I remember when we only had 3 channels, and that was when Global TV suddenly went on air. Before that, we only had a couple channels. So it was. I'm old enough, like I said, I'm 56, so I remember that stuff happening. And
now we have satellite TV. You can watch anything in the world if you want.
Yeah, no, 100%. I sometimes sit at home laughing, like I said on the onset of this. I watched Contagion last night. You flip it on, pick a movie, pick what you want to watch. Back was the day when you saw a movie in the theaters, it might suddenly appear on TV 7 years later. Unlike the way it is now, and has been for years, of being able to buy, DVDs and Blu-rays, and then of course all digital stuff now that is available. It's such a different, ease, if you will, of being able to obtain things. We have a much different world in which we live in of instantaneous gratification of being able to get things, want to get your hands on things. Before, you just acted differently then too. And I also find, I must say too, I didn't come from a bad, poor upbringing or anything like that. My father owned his own business. My mother worked part-time, raised us kids. And, but still, I can remember vividly as well too, like as a 10-year-old thinking, I wanted this for my birthday. I got this, this car, and that's what I was getting. And I got a couple other things, but you didn't get an abundance of things all the time. We had what we had, and you made the world around you your playground. I had a lot of really good neighborhood friends. We did stuff with, people just engage differently now. So, the fact that we have the things like the festivals that we talked about, and those are the summer festivals. Of course, there's, Ice on White. There's the, I can't believe the festival. I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of it. That Deep Freeze Festival over on 118th Avenue, which is a really cool festival.
Is that the Ice Castles one, or?
No. This is the Ice on White is more the Ice Castle one.
Okay.
The Deep Freeze Festival is one that happens on 118th Avenue. It's very culturally infused, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of the one that they do in the that Christy Moran puts on. That's in the summertime too. But it's a fantastic event that takes place, and it embeds a lot of different cultures, a lot of demographics of people that come in, and they call it a Deep Freeze Festival because the reference to the cold weather that we could experience, but they also have a lot of fun with it. They actually have deep freeze races in there. So they've got these deep freezers, and like large freezers, and somebody gets inside, i.e. my youngest daughter would get inside, and it's mounted on skis, and you have a race. You race somebody else, you're pushing these things. Only in Edmonton are you going to do that type of thing.
That's terrifying.
They got to go do it. It's a hoot. And you push along and you run along, I don't know, 100 and some odd feet. And then you turn around, you got to spin it and then push back and go the other way. It's just a pile of fun. But that's just one thing that goes on. They have street hockey festivals and all kinds of stuff. But it's stuff like that, kind of the raw, make your own fun of little things. You don't have to have something where you got some Vegas style fun happening. It goes a little bit old school sort of fun that happens in those things. And that's what I think is super cool. So back when you're talking about as we grew up, it was a much different experience. So when I really think about now, as we're talking about this, what my family did a lot of was on Sunday gatherings. We'd go to Horlock Park. We'd go to Borden Park back then. The Horlock Park was pretty much a staple that we would do in our family that I grew up as a child, and my father's sisters, and their husbands and some aunts and uncles and their children, my cousins, we would get together and we'd picnic at Horlock Park. I bet you 3 out of 4 weekends of the month.
Oh,
And this
wow.
is when the cultural piece would kick in. Eventually, they started introduced the game of cricket to us. So we were playing cricket in there, and until the kids kind of thought we were too cool for it, we just got bored with it, and then the parents maybe played a bit of it. But yeah, we did that stuff. So
I don't understand how you can be like half Brit and like not know cricket.
I know. True. That's very true.
It's one of those cultural monikers that all of us kind of retain from the empire, right?
Yeah.
It's our connection to the Commonwealth
Yeah.
beyond like the dollar bills and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of, particularly Canadians of like English or British Isle descent, after a few generations, they gradually feel more attached to being Canadian versus the ties to the, I guess like the motherland or the fatherland, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only person I feel like might take that kind of differently is which prince was it? Was it Prince Harry? The one who him and his wife, they recently moved to Vancouver.
Yeah.
I feel like he's the only one who's not going to forget where he's from, because it's like every time he looks at like a $20 bill, he'll see his grandma's face.
Yeah. I heard something about that. So how would you feel that every time that you open up your wallet, you see your grandmother staring at you?
Yeah, like, oh, you left the family, like you're getting written out of the world.
I just read on the weekend a reference to saying, because they had landed out in Victoria, apparently renting some $11 million home there, and I read on the weekend that they just under the radar slipped away and went down south of the border before the borders were closed. Yeah, but they apparently made their way down to LA. Now, there might be a bit of a stretch on the discussion, because maybe they left here, went down to LA, and border closing, they're just choosing to stay down there right now. And people are just saying, well, they've just abandoned us. So again, I don't know how valid that whole discussion is. And by the time, like you said, when people are, maybe they're watching this down the road in the future, and maybe somebody suddenly says, oh no, they're back here, then they're hanging out in Vancouver or Victoria, but whatever.
I feel like as Canadians, I feel like we could turn that into an opportunity. That might be our opportunity to say that, okay, we'll still keep the royalty, but we'll keep our version of the family. So Harry will be the King of Canada, Meghan will be the Queen, and like this, they'll be on the bills or something. I don't know. If we ever decided to pivot further away from the British Isles, like I feel like that could definitely be one of the talking points, right?
That could be it, exactly. As long as she brings her cast members from Suits into the mix somewhere along the line.
Well, most of them at least. I feel like some are better actors than others, right?
There's that too, yeah.
Just like in a lot of these like mainstream programs like Suits, they're always pretending to be in New York City, but the actual recording is happening in Vancouver or Toronto or somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Why not just talk about where they are? Why not promote Canada a bit? But
I agree. Yeah. I've never really understood the rationale behind that, quite frankly. But because Suits was filmed, I think mainly in Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point too, I think there's a lot of stuff that is filmed in Vancouver. Heck, there's a lot of filming that's done here in Edmonton. There was even here at Telus World of Science. Yeah, here at Telus World of Science back, it's got to be 12 years ago now, probably. There was a Christmas film that was filmed in Edmonton, and like a Hollywood version of one that went to TV, directly to TV, and they filmed here at the Science Center. So they used our building, but they put a different brand over top of the namesake to name something different. But they shot outside of our building, and they even used some of our staff as extras walking into the building and stuff like that. So, but they shot all around Edmonton, even actually in the neighborhood that I live in too. So it was filming.
I mean, maybe you could tell us a bit more about that. Like, one of the things that I know a lot of our viewers are fascinated by is like, how can we continue to promote the cultural institutions, whether it's by including them in movies or sets and stuff like that, or increasing tourism and stuff. How can we ensure that people are aware that there is the Telus World of Science in Edmonton, there is the AGA and stuff like that? And would you mind even perhaps telling us how you kind of got on the journey towards the role that you're in right now? Like,
Sure.
How did you kind of dip your toe, so to speak, in this pool?
Yeah, no, sure. Okay, first off, like with my journey here, I've been here a little over 18 years. So I came here in February of 2002. And my background prior to that was, for many, many years, had been in the world of fundraising. And I worked for a number of organizations in the city here, and provincially and nationally represented. and had a opportunity that came around. And these guys were looking for somebody, and I came in and filled a position that was here back then in early 2002. And so fundraising, corporate fundraising, community development, things like that. And then that evolved, and over time, and then by about 2010, my job changed over as it started to pick up different pieces, and it evolved into, into the chief operating officer role that then morphed into different pieces of things. And so that's how I landed here, and I can explain about this organization, my time here, a little bit more in a second. But as a facility, one of the things that maybe many Edmontonians don't realize as well, from a tourism aspect of things, Telus World of Science Edmonton, where I work at, is first off, we opened up in 1984 as the original building, which is the Cardinal building built here in Coronation Park. And then it expanded, had small expansion in the late 90s, and then expanded again into 2001, became then branded, was initially the Edmonton Space Science Center and Space Sciences Center, and then became the Odysseum for a few years. And it carried that brand from July of 2001 until May of 2005, when we had a corporate branding agreement with Telus and became Telus World of Science Edmonton. Telus at the time invested $42 million across Canada that went into 5 different centers, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, and Montreal, and naming either the facility as a whole or portions thereof. And portions thereof were Toronto, it was a plaza up front. They had the Telus Plaza. In Montreal, it was the Telus IMAX. The 3 entities in Edmonton, Calgary, and Vancouver, they branded the facility for different terms. So anyway, so that's why we came up with our name, and we've done a few different expansions. In 2012, we built a big travel exhibit gallery, which is super cool. And I say that because the point of, well, I'll talk about culturally here, what we've done. And then we're about to go into another big expansion right away here. We're in the midst of it. In fact, we're going to be breaking ground pretty quickly here. What a lot of people won't know, likely, is because we're Canadian, is the fact that the Science Center is the second largest tourist attraction for a draw in Alberta. We are the largest of this type of entity. Yeah, the only place that exceeds the numbers we do is the Calgary Zoo. Calgary Zoo does significant numbers. They do about 1 million people a year.
For viewers out there, the Calgary Zoo is not that great. Edmonton Zoo is just a little better, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, Edmonton Zoo is really nice. They've done a brilliant job in developing it too. I couldn't agree more. I think they've done a really, really nice job expanding. Because I remember it when it was a Storyland Valley Zoo. You talk about cultural things, and the Storyland Valley Zoo existed when I was a kid. There's old home movies we got when I was just this little kid running around there, and it's something I really appreciate in this city, and we certainly get to our family. And I love how it's expanded. And one thing I think is almost semi-disappointing when people go to the zoo, they don't recognize how vast it is, and they may not get to all of it. So people, when they go there, they should really take the time to spread their wings, so to speak, and make sure they do see all of it. But yeah, so with the Science Center here, and we draw in just about 500,000 people a year that will come here. And a lot of what we call rubber tire traffic, people that are coming from outside of the city, either around the province or beyond. And then when we hold special events and special traveling exhibits, and that's why I mentioned the 2012 expansion when we built this travel exhibit gallery, we can be bringing people in from all over Western Canada, in fact, even people from Europe and Asia that are coming here. Example being in 2012, when we hosted, we were the second city in the world to host the Star Wars exhibit. We had a lot of people from Asia that were coming over here to Edmonton to come see this thing, which was pretty cool. And so, for us to recognize what we have in the city from cultural places and educational places, such as, our facility, the Royal Alberta Museum, the Art Gallery, Storyland Valley Zoo, Youth Art, Fort Edmonton Park, there's been a lot of investment going into each of those facilities. And then when you expand out and you look at the Citadel, the Windspear, facilities like that, we put a lot of money into the cultural experiences here. And had the experience to have people have said, what about the competition of them? And I have long said, and I will say it for as many years as I can possibly imagine, I don't believe in people saying, well, the Royal Alberta Museum, when they open, they're going to be big competition for it. No, they're not. Our biggest competition is ourselves. They are an asset. Any of those facilities are assets, and we are all assets to each other, because we create, by all existing and coexisting, we create a greater, stronger cultural opportunity for people to be able to attend experiences and things, and thereby traffic will come to them. And so I hope everybody that comes to Edmonton to come see one of our exhibits, I hope they go to those other places. We hope they go to other places because it's really important. And and my point about us being our biggest competition, if we don't provide the best possible service that we can provide, the best programming, the best overall experience and the value, then we are failing ourselves and we're failing our customers, and thereby become our worst competition. Okay, that's my way of thinking on it anyway. And I gladly open any discussion on it with anybody. And again, I think we're extremely lucky with places like the Art Gallery and the Royal Alberta Museum. I can't wait to see Fort Edmonton Park when it opens up. I've had the opportunity to run by it a number of times when I run through the River Valley, and it's really amazing what they're doing inside there. And I've seen some of the sketch work and designs of things they're creating. This city is in for, and this province is in for one heck of a great surprise when they open the gates to that place, and once we're able to, congregate, if you will, into facilities like that and ours. Once again, when this crisis is over, to go to those places. They're fascinating, and they're doing brilliant work with it, and that takes a lot of vision, takes a lot of foresight by a lot of individuals, leaders in the community, and people right across the spectrum. But then it also takes, enough of a belief from folks, but it also takes a commitment from the governments, from all three levels of government, to be able to fund these programs, and subsequently by the public, and from corporations, from individuals, to make these things happen. They believe in them enough. So, but that belief is also generated and promoted, of course, by the people who are living, eating, breathing, drinking it each day in, day out. So,
one of the things like I personally appreciate a lot is like, especially considering all the new developments that are happening right now in Edmonton, there's a lot of new architecture that's coming into place. So, for example, the Stanley A. Milner Library in downtown.
Yeah.
So it complete redevelopment. I like calling it the Bibliotank. Do you see what I did there? Portmanteau. It looks like a tank, but it's bibliotech, like a library.
Well done.
But yeah, it's fascinating because it's one of those buildings that it went from kind of like this drab, almost kind of semi-brutalist type of style to something that people will actually pay attention to, right?
Well,
and I got that library because in 2010, when I first got into U of A, I was in that library. I got the notification on my phone, but I didn't have data. So I walked over to some random stranger. I asked her, I was like, "Excuse me, miss, can I borrow your laptop to find out if I got into university?"
no kidding.
Yeah, it was a surreal experience, but that's why, like, I feel like it's fair to say that a lot of Edmontonians, when you talk to them about the first time they went to Fort Edmonton Park or a particular library or like a public space or what have you, many people have like unique memories associated with those. So we should definitely like continue to develop and cherish them.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And it's interesting as you say that, because as you talk about the library, and I won't get into the story, but I have a very definite, memory about different pieces in my adult age, and even as a kid going to that library, and in adult age, I met this life-changing sort of experience of somebody that I met at the library. This is a young fellow. I was in there, just a short story, and I was actually studying for some stuff with my MBA. And I wanted to find a quiet little spot. The fellow came over and started chatting with me, and he had some challenges in his life, put it this way. And we just had this really unique conversation. I just closed my laptop, closed my books, and I sat and chatted with this guy for like 2 hours. I ended up writing a paper for my MBA all about that experience. And because it was such a profound thing to be able to, it was one of those moments where you realize what's going on in my world right now. This is almost like a sign. I just need to stop, and I need to just pay attention to the here and now, what's actually going on in front of me, and listen, and just pay attention to what's this gift, if you will, of this opportunity to have a discussion with someone. So it comes back to, as you say, that I think a lot of people do. They remember, oh yeah, I remember the first time I went to K-Days. I remember the first time I went to Fort Ed and went to Mutart. I got engaged at the Mutart. I did this, I did that. Those things matter to people, and they do those things. The folk fest, fringe festivals, and things like that, they matter to folks, and that's why in today's world right now, when we get the news this past weekend that the fringe this year in the summer has now been canceled because of the COVID crisis, really struck deep with people, and because you can start to see the domino effect that's going to happen with it of other cultural events that are going to go on the breaks, if you will, on the shelf this year. It's going to happen, and it's a really unfortunate situation. But I also believe, that we as human beings, and we as Edmontonians for that matter, rally. And I really hope that people truly support one another and reach out to people. When this all began a month ago, I made a commitment to myself and to others, if you will, that I will call minimum of 3 people, ideally minimum of 5 if I can do it, each day. Reach out and call and just check in with people. I'm either leaving a message, checking how you doing. And I really hope people do some of that. And it could be a very short conversation or a long one, or leave a message, just to, it serves me well, and I hope it makes a connection to other folks too. And I say all that because I hope that we as a community do more of that, and we don't just do it now. We don't just do it during this crisis. We realize that this is something we need to do, because social media has sort of torn apart some of that fabric of connection of folks. I hope people are grabbing pen and paper and mailing letters. Get a stamp, mail somebody a letter. People love to get those in the mail instead of just getting a bill. Do those sort of things. You find unique things, how people are celebrating people's birthdays, and you see the car parades going by. I saw one on TV yesterday, I think it was, and it was showing teachers were standing outside of a school in the city here, and students paraded by with their families, because the students were missing their teachers, seeing them, and the teachers, vice versa, were missing their families and the children. And it was cool to see that connection. So we're finding different ways to connect. And so circling back to the loss of the Fringe and likely many other like events this year, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And it's a reality check. I've often said that in the last few weeks, because I've had some things that have been canceled that I would be participating in. I run in a lot of trail races, and I've had some big races that have been canceled this year. And one of them that really sticks with me, that happens in August, and I got the notification about 3 weeks ago. I was like, oh my God, I was just choked right away. Yeah. I understood the rationale behind it. The fellow Gary Robbins who organized it, him his event partner Jeff, when they made it the right decision. And it just cut me deeply because that really matters to me, that race, but for about 15 seconds. And I'm not kidding you, 15, 20 seconds. And I turn around on perspective. 835 people died in Italy that day. So what? So a race gets canceled. It'll be around there again. People are dying. People are really sick. There's all kinds of tragedies happening right now. Perspective. So the fact that we have to hunker down in our homes and change the way that we're living life right now. Sure, nobody wishes this on anybody, but we figure out how we can adapt and how we can make things better. And I hope that in turn with that, it also creates new opportunity for after the crisis. What do we do with that? What do we do with what we learned to make our world a better place? And not just plan for the next pandemic that may occur, which will certainly occur in this world's span. But how can we, in the new world that we want to live in, as cliche as that sounds, a new world, but what do we want that world to look like? How do we want to behave as individuals, as families? How do we want to connect with our families, our friends, our neighbors? How many people live in their homes and they don't know their neighbors around the street, yet they live within a baseball throw away from them and they've never connected? Take the opportunity to make those connections. How can we as organizations, our organization, Telus World of Science, we're discussing daily, what can we do to reconnect back to the community? And I think our team has done a really good job here by creating things like do-it-yourself science, at-home science. Our CEO has done this, Al's Kitchen, and he does these really cool videos that he presents online, showing stuff that people can do back at home. And
before we forget, would you mind also telling our viewers where they can go to check out some of these things that the Telus is doing?
For sure, yeah. So it's of course on our Instagram, which is Telus World of Science Edmonton. Or you could look at myTuesday.ca, and it's actually Tuesday, Telus World of Science Edmonton.ca, or Tuesday, TWOSE, the acronym.ca. We'll pop them over to, and they can look through that. It's on our Facebook page, and then of course follow us on Twitter. And our teams puts this stuff out, and there's a whole bunch. But if you go to our webpage, can actually then look through, scroll down, you can see a whole bunch of things. Our social media has spiked significantly. Our marketing team has done a great job with it, but they're only doing a great job with the great work that's being done by our science team as well, putting out some really fun stuff and being a really cool collaboration. So we're figuring out how we have to work differently and how we have to work smarter and be able to adapt. And I was talking to a businessman in the city that has a small candy shop called Via Bella in my neighborhood. And he's operated this place, he and his wife, for 6 years now, I think it is. And he's had to completely adapt. He can't have people come to the door, so he's gone online. And he's changed things around. They figure out what they needed to do, and it's going great for him. And he said to me, I was chatting with him just the other day, standing at his business when I had gone online, ordered some candy, and I was over picking the stuff up. And he just said he had to rethink the way that they were operating, and it's done a world of good for them too. And so he's embracing a bad situation. So I think, we as individuals and as a community as a whole have a responsibility to ourselves and to each other to figure out in the here and now how we can adapt. We can sit there and sure, we can feel bad about the situation, but do that for only as long as you can possibly park it for. Don't forget about it, because we have to deal with these things. But how can we make things positive? Don't dwell on the downside of it. And again, for those people who are losing people, my heart breaks for them. And I don't begrudge them a second of any of that. But again, for the rest of us, how can we turn around and try to make things better? How can you make something better for somebody else? I'm a big believer in, by giving a little, you give a lot. And I'm a huge believer too, and that I get way more out of giving something to others and than I do from receiving something. As odd as that may sound.
No, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
To follow up on that, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
I want to understand, so prior to the COVID phenomenon, there were a lot of recent budgetary changes coming from the province and other levels of government,
Yep.
and some of them affected tourism, arts, media, a variety of institutions that represent our cultural capital. So first there was that, then, unfortunately, the economic woes with regarding to overseas events in the oil and gas market. So Alberta's primary export, petroleum byproducts, oil and gas, energy products, basically. And then on top of that, then the COVID crisis happened. So it was like a three-way whammy, all kind of influencing our society, but in particular affecting our institutions. So considering the recent developments and some of the innovations that you guys have been making at the Telus World of Science, but also at some of the other organizations like the Citadel, like WindSpear, what do you see is in the future? Do you feel like there are opportunities where we could, I know it's super cliche, everybody talks about diversifying the economy, but do you think there's a golden opportunity here where we can leverage our established cultural institutions and build up our cultural capital, and maybe that's our way out of our reliance historically on certain products?
Yeah, I think there is. I don't know what exactly the answer is, but I think there is, and I think we have to investigate those and pursue them as a whole, as a community. The idea of us being so reliant on us, by us, of course, I mean the province, and by extension drawn from the city of Edmonton and beyond, by relying on the wealth from oil so much, it can be catastrophic. Nobody, no organization, no individual, no municipality should rely so heavily on one thing, and we have to diversify, to what you talked about, figure out what we can do, we don't just build these cultural facilities and have them created just because. You don't have them there just to draw on. They have to serve, and we do serve a purpose. But how can we celebrate them? How can we make them stronger? When you look at the universities, from MacEwan, from University of Alberta, even going to NAIT and Norquest, King's College, those places all matter, and they draw a lot of international students in, and a lot of international investment would come with it as well too. The research that is happening in this city, we should be, in my opinion, finding ways to be able to capture more strength in that as well, from the research end of things, because there's a lot of money in that, quite frankly. But when you look at places like us, sure, we get 1.5 million people that are coming through our doors here. If you add in compounding to everybody else, there's huge numbers. Some of those are you and I going to the same places, but that doesn't matter. You still become a patron. We shouldn't be so Canadian about it. And I say so Canadian, so almost all apologetic about it and whatnot, saying, okay, we've got these great places, but did you see what they're doing in New York? Did you see? Yeah, I've seen what they're doing there. I've been to science centers all over North America and even in Europe, and love them. You've seen some amazing facilities, but I can guarantee you, stuff we're doing here is second to none, really. And IMAX is an example, is a very good example. The IMAX industry, we have an IMAX theater here in our facility. We have when we're operating, we have one of the most efficiently run IMAX operations in the world.
Really, in the world?
No question about it, without question. And we truly do. And we have, one of the most state-of-the-art theaters as well too. And and I'm not just saying that. That's legitimately true. The numbers are there. And from a building operation and from the business operations of it, yeah, we are one of the most sustainable, because it's an industry that has really struggled, quite frankly. So you got to figure out, okay, what can you do? And this is a very good example, actually, to your point of discussion about what we can do. This facility, Telus World of Science, in its previous names and whatnot, used to generate, I believe it was like 75%, 77%, it was before my time, of its revenue through IMAX. Believe it or not, most of the revenue came through IMAX. Now, keep it in mind, when IMAX was launched, IMAX was a new thing. IMAX really started at Expo in Vancouver, was when it really launched out. And then it grew from there. But this was before people had at-home theaters, and before you had Netflix and everything else like that, and before things like what do you call it? I'm just trying to think of some of these movies that would be all about, say, Daily Planet, things like that. So people would come to see IMAX shows because of the uniqueness of the big screen. And yeah, ours is like 7 stories high. Not all IMAX theaters are as big of a screen, but it was unique. Times have evolved, things have grown from there. So this organization, again, relied on the revenue coming from one big pocket. Had that organization continued to do that, I wouldn't be sitting in this building right now. It would not have existed. While we have one of the most successful IMAX operations in the world, we do not rely on it as heavily as back then. We couldn't. We don't generate near that sort of number from it. We still generate good money from it, but we've had to diversify. We've had to diversify our offerings. In the late 90s, recognizing, okay, what we needed to do was start looking at our school programs. How can we start expanding those? How can we offer more to the formal school systems from K to 9 mainly, and how can we enhance what they're doing? So we turned around, we took something that we were doing already, and then we created more program offerings, because schools couldn't afford to have not every school could afford to have, and I mean truly every single school could not have all of the science programming that we develop here. That's why they come to us. Same with the reason why they would go to the art gallery or they go to the museum, and that, because you can go to these facilities that can provide teaching to the students and to the teachers, and by extension, the rest of the community. And I'm talking just school programs. So we, again, diversified ourselves in what we were doing there. We diversified in 2012 when we opened up a traveling exhibit gallery, because we found an opportunity to say, okay, look, we can increase our numbers by bringing in these big exhibits. We are now one of, and again, I'm not kidding you, one of the markets that big traveling exhibits want to come to. Harry Potter, when it came here in 2013 to 2014, a stretch of time, we were, bar none, the smallest city, population base, that they had ever gone to. They weren't even considering us until about a year and a bit before that, because we just weren't big enough as far as they're concerned. But the market became, we could prove, no, we were drawing in enough people here. And believe it or not, people in this community buy a lot of merchandise. We go to concerts come to the city because, when they can, because people buy merchandise. And they do here then too, and that's all part of the business model behind it.
Right.
But I say all this because, so we did as an organization, we diversified our base. So we aren't reliant on one thing. And if we can do that, communities, other businesses can do that. And by extension, the province can do that. We've got to. That's not to deny the fact that, yeah, oil is and should and likely will be a big piece of the game
Of course.
for many days beyond my time around. But we can't just rely on that. If you do, it's proven fact, you're into big trouble. And so we should be looking at how can we turn around and do things with facilities like ours, and create, other foreign investment, and also from the tourism aspect of things. Now, tourism is a difficult game right now, but I heard this morning somebody in the tourism industry that they're anticipating they won't get back to the numbers that we're expecting this year prior to the crisis. We won't actually get those numbers for probably 3 years out before it actually resets and gets around to that. It's a long journey out. Yeah, it's a long journey out. And that's, from being able to model out some expectations. And, but we'll see. But I have good faith in the world, and I have good faith in, once things do reset, for lack of a better term, that people will turn around and invest differently. We're going to get an influx of a lot of new businesses, I believe. There's unfortunately going to be businesses that are not going to come out of this, and they're going to fold their doors. But I also believe there's going to be a whole new world of imagination, because during this time, I also hope and I believe there are a lot of young and old entrepreneurs, the future business leaders, the people that are community leaders that are going to have time to really sit and think, and those times that they wanted to be able to have to start to collaborate and thinking about how can I change the world? How can I fix things? I see a change. The world is not, we are not going to come out of this and be the exact same world. Sounds so cliche and easy for me to say. We can't possibly be. So with that change, what does that look like? And I don't know the answer to that, but I can't wait to see what people bring forward and what people will change. And, we have to be able to respond to what we're dealt. And I talked earlier on about with Telus World of Science here, how we're going through an expansion coming up. And so the construction company and the architects and the team that we're working with, we are meeting daily. And I truly do mean daily about how, okay, look, we've got a problem and we have an opportunity here. How can we take advantage of this opportunity, move some things up, get some construction going now that we weren't going to do for a few months' time, and be proactive. So when we do open up, we're ahead of the game. And we are being responsive, and we're also employing people quicker now too. So
it's interesting. So my background is like civil structure. With the braces, it's hard to speak sometimes. So
yeah,
structural engineering, and one of my colleagues made a joke the other day about how, okay, construction companies, the highways are empty. You want to block the white mud, the yellowhead, Anthony Henday. Now's your time.
Yeah, totally.
Everybody comes back, do it right now.
Yeah, I saw a comment on social media that it said, why don't you do all the road construction now?
Exactly. Fix all the potholes, do whatever maintenance you want to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel like that's just, it's too straightforward. Somebody somewhere in some head office will find a way not to do it, but
well, but in fairness too, is it does sound very straightforward, and I've even had a few people say to me, and even some colleagues say, why don't we do this? Why don't we start building outside right now? Well, we can't, because we don't have our final designs in, we don't have our development permits in. You've got to supply chain management issues we're dealing with about getting steel in, so we can't advance some of those things, but we can move some things up. So there are elements that are stopping them. But then also in fairness too, the governments are saying, okay, well, we're going to commit just a random number, $100 million to the redevelopment of the Yellow Trail. I'm just totally randomly picking an example, but $100 million is going to go into redevelopment of Yellow Trail. And they're going, hang on a minute, we have to park that for a second. Is that as pressing right now as the financial situation that we're faced with right now, considering people unemployed all over the place? Yes, we want to employ people. Where can we put our money? So they've got to figure out the balancing act on that. And I'm quite certain that there's got to be something happening that is influencing those decisions to move forward right now, because they are saying there's only so much money that they can actually be spending out on things, and they've got to find the balance. But they're on the same point. There has to be that infrastructure work happening, keeping people employed, keeping the economy flowing. There has to be something, creating that and spawning, the dollar, keep on flowing anyway. So, but it would be nice while the roads are empty, block it off and just go to town. Like just tell everybody, okay, you're staying inside for a little bit now. We're tearing up this road. Now's the time to do it. Sounds ever so easy, but it's not quite as easy as that. But I'm sure, and in fairness too, we're dealing with the never-ending winter right now in our city since it's so cold and snowy. I'm sure as this changes, as it changes over the following weeks, so a month out from now, I suspect we'll start to see a lot of that stuff happening anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to get back to normal, right? Like if we look back in human history, what was it, 102 years ago, Spanish flu? Terrible. It ruined a lot of communities, destroyed cities like Philadelphia, et al., lots of other places. But 100 years later, until COVID happened, Spanish flu, who? What? Huh?
Exactly.
Like,
Yep.
it's like
Yep.
if history goes on long enough, eventually the newer generations start to forget it, right? So I feel like that could be a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it could be a blessing in that, there aren't certain memories of human experiences that haunt us to the end of time. On the other hand, does it kind of make us prone to repeating some of those mistakes? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But interesting philosophical topic, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And it's an interesting, really interesting point because, I don't know if it's out of cockiness or what, but we sit there and go, no, that'll never happen again. The Holocaust, God forbid, could ever happen again. Different wars, well, that stuff won't happen again. Well, like you say, the Spanish flu, that won't happen again. What are we in now? I saw a really interesting TED talk that was put back, Bill Gates from 5 years ago, talking about this happening. And he said, and I don't want to dare try and quote him, but it was something to the effect of, it won't be the next world war that will kill 10 million people. It'll be a pandemic. They have planned, we are planning, governments are planning for a war. We go through all kinds of war games and strategies and that. We are not planning for this. We are not anticipating the possible effects of this so we can react properly. If a war is to break out, man, they're on it like right now. And they've got all kinds of different things that this happens, we go here, the whole risk matrix. This will change. This will certainly change because, for our future generations, and if there's anything that the younger generations can be doing now to make the world a better place, it's demanding the here and now. All generations are focusing and making sure, not that this doesn't happen again, because this type of thing is very likely to happen again.
Yeah.
That is, the virus aspect of things, but how we respond to it can be so different that the outcome isn't what we're experiencing now as deeply anyway, and as prolonged. And I think that's something that the generations now and the younger generations, I really do believe are going to be demanding of it, but they can't forget it because it will be very easy for it to be yesterday's news when we get out of this and want to carry on with life and pretend it'll be that somebody else's problem. No, it's our problem now. And it's the future generations' problem. We don't want it to be their problem. If there's any gift that we can give the future generations, is doing right by them and fixing things. So,
I mean, it's opening up a lot of inequalities in society, right? So you mentioned how you're working. If I'm not mistaken, you're still in the office?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Okay. So I still go to the office, but I know a lot of my friends and like people I went to school with, right? Like some of them, especially the ones who are working in energy industry, many of them got temporarily laid off. Some of them, like they actually got laid off. Some people who are working in hospitality, the arts, like you name it, whatever the industry might be, like different people losing their jobs and their entire career trajectory, like all of it just kind of pivoting hard left, right? So not everybody even has, I guess, the privilege to continue to be working, like in the circumstances that you and I are in, or you even have full hours or even like to be working from home. So would you say that in times like these, like there will be a lot of young people waking up who are realizing, hey, wait a minute, like why are so many of us kind of, doing the rat race, if you will, not really getting any real value in terms of our mental health, our life, or anything out of our careers? And like, what is all this culminating towards? Do you think people are gonna, or especially young people, they are gonna start to question their choices a bit more, question the cards that they've been dealt with by previous generations through employment, through life, through their communities, and so forth?
Yeah, I do, and I think in fairness too, I believe the younger generations were already doing an element to that, and I think this will just drive it home a little bit more. And I think on the same point, it will also, the older generations will start to kind of rethink things as well too, and a responsibility factor in going, okay, how much am I working? Like you're saying, quality of life and different things like that. Yeah, I think certainly, and as a qualifier here too, yeah, I'm still working, and for the record, our organization, we had to lay people off. Our part-time staff right across the board were all laid off. I, for the record, think we handled it extremely well. I believe outside of ATB, who had closed 2 branches because they had a staff member who was sick, I believe our facility, our organization, was the very first to pull the trigger and close. We announced our closure on March 12th, and by the next day, others started to happen, and it unfolded over a bit after that. And I say that because our team did a really good job of being able to look at the situation that was going on, and by extension, we collaborated with all of our staff, and our staff felt like they had skin in the game of the discussion of what we were doing, and they truly did. Not just felt, but they did. They helped influence the discussion. So yeah, so we laid off. We've laid off over 100 people because all of our part-time staff were laid off. Half of our full-time staff were laid off. Now that said, with the federal government wage subsidy program that's coming in, we're working diligently and quite effectively to be able to onboard some people, get them back, on the payroll here as quickly as possible, and I believe that's going to happen. And my colleagues are dealing with that, and so with the sudden shift of things, yeah, it certainly has had to influence people to start second guess and I don't say second guess, but rethinking choices and decisions and what they really want to be able to have, and what they want to be doing in life. I think people are going to career change. People are going to they can just make different decisions, not just career-wise, but just again, life-wise. I think they have to. If we don't, we have completely missed the opportunity. We have tragically missed the opportunity, and to recognize that as awful as this situation is, there's a bit of a gift embedded into it as well too. When we talk about climate change and issues that are happening from climate change, and improvements, if you will, and what they used to say, oh no, you can never help people, and where you're going to be able to have stopped cars from driving. Well, look what's going on now. But it's a matter of circumstance. So again, from the gift aspect of things, we should be looking at that which we're facing, and through adversity, we have an opportunity to become victims. We have the opportunity to become champions, and champions to make things better, improve on things, and not just try demand it. Actually demand that our governments, that corporates, that the individuals, we do this. And and I don't mean that in some big rally, complaining way or whatever, but do this in the right way and be good about it. And one thing that I have a real low tolerance for, to be honest with you, is when you'll see on the news and others, where they sit there and they grilling politicians about, well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that in this situation?
It's harder than it looks.
It is. It's crazy hard. And, they're making decisions. They're best informed decisions. I would trust and hope that they are continually making the best informed decisions based on the information they have in front of them and that they have available to them. And sometimes that information is not coming from solid resources. So in fairness, and that's why decisions are changing. I talked about us coming to the decision to make our move to close. We went through a whole risk matrix about what we're going to do. And if this happens, we move him this way, we move this way, we move that way. Had to start thinking about it. So our decision process was easy. Back to the politicians, as an example, and what I don't like is when people sit there and they badger, saying, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? I didn't. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't. But I'm telling you what we're doing now and what we're going to do. Instead of prolonging and wasting a bunch of airtime on what didn't happen, figure that out. Don't ignore it, but figure out what we could have done and learn by it. But what can I do now to make a better place, as opposed to dumping a whole bunch of resources into explaining what, and when it's critical right now, dumping a bunch of resources into why we didn't do something. Well, we didn't, and like you said, it's really hard. It's really, really hard. And we're fortunate to have the likes of Dina Henshaw, who has become very celebrated here, and I think that's fantastic. You know, women in science it's fantastic that the people who I've long believed are the heroes. You know, I've long believed that medical professionals and educators are not paid near as much as they should get paid for the influence they have on our communities and our lives. And I think it's great that those are the people that are being recognized as heroes too. You know, and I actually put a comment reference of this on Facebook recently, and just saying, let's not forget this when this is all over. You know how important these people are, and the sacrifices they're making for our lives too. And you know, and as a qualifier as well too, from medical professional doesn't mean just the people in the hospitals. God bless them. My wife works at the Stollery, and but researchers, the people that are, you know, that are behind the scenes effectively, and doing incredible work, you know, every day, day in and day out. But in the current situation, to try and help us all, God bless them all too.
Yeah. I would add on, like, there's one other reality of our country, of our society at large, that has really opened up recently. So beyond just the need for improving the conditions of a lot of frontline staff in the medical space and a number of other key areas, it also made me realize and become really self-aware of my privilege as someone who happens to have so not only a university degree, but a degree that can lead to a job that can pay decent coin and cheap and stuff like that. And if you think about it, like there was an article that was making rounds a few years ago. It's still relevant today. Something about how 40% of Americans could not handle a surcharge or a bill of $400 or more if they suddenly had to pay it. Like they would have to either borrow the money or sell something, right? And for Canadians, it's something similar. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the average Canadian is like $27,000 to $29,000 in debt.
Yeah,
so per capita. That's aside from the mortgage, and we are one of the most in debt peoples in the entire planet, right?
yeah.
So suddenly, when we hear these conversations about people who are making very good wages, highest in the entire continent, surprisingly, but at the same time, they're one paycheck away from their entire lives falling apart. It's mind blowing.
It is mind boggling. Yeah. I really appreciate you saying that, because I've had that type of discussion with some folks in the last couple of weeks, especially in the situation has really brought that on. And I actually heard a statistic on the weekend saying that the average American has 5 times credit card debt from what they have in savings. 5 times the credit card debt. Yeah. And and it was, what did it say? I think only 15% of Americans have in savings enough to sustain them for a month. That's in savings, okay?
Just 15%, and that's just for 1 month.
Yeah, just for 1 month, exactly. Yeah, and so it's really scary statistics, because like you said, you know, people that can be making good coin. You know, I know people that who make substantially less than somebody else, yet their financial position is way better because they've managed their money better. They've been able to, you know, they live within their means, you know, and the analogy of beer income champagne lifestyle screws people over, you know, and self-done. And that's one of the wake-up calls I think would come out of this, because nobody would have ever imagined this was going to happen in our lifetime, you know, to the magnitude. We watched watched Contagion. Yeah. For those who would have watched it before, would go, man, could you imagine that ever happening? We're living that right now. And, you know, with so many people losing their jobs, and then what's making it more and more difficult, you know, reverse time by a year. If somebody lost their job, generally speaking, or even during the recession a number of years ago, people then were selling their cars, selling their motorboats, you know, they were overextended on things, selling their skidoos, selling their vacation homes, selling their homes. It's pretty tough to do that now. I can't imagine many people selling their any of these products because people aren't inclined to buy, because A, they don't have the revenue stream, and B, they don't want to touch anything. So it's pretty hard to sort of liquidate, if you will, and then pay off debt and then free yourself a little bit. It's a real vicious circle right now.
Even with the financial institutions, like there was an article, I don't want to pinpoint the bank in case they decide to sue me, but there were a number of articles in mainstream channels like on the CBC and stuff where they were talking about how some of the banks, when they tell you that, hey, you don't have to pay your mortgage for X amount of time, so 3 months, 6 months, whatever, they amalgamate all of that interest and they add it all at once at the 6 month mark. It's kind of like how, have you ever seen those old commercials about, hey, come to John Doe Furniture Store, don't pay for the first 12 months or 24 months or whatever. And then like that, when that time expires, that time plus 1 day, that's when all the interest that accumulated during the previous period, you have to pay the principal plus all of that all at once.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people don't read the fine print, and then for lack of a better phrase, they get totally screwed. And then what do you do, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a balloon payment is what they have. So suddenly you just get hammered on something. They refer, that term's used often in finances. And yeah, like the situation, it looks good on surface, and it's good for the here and now. Okay, you're going to defer your mortgage payments. And I saw a complaint about people saying the other day, saying these banks are making $46 billion last year. Might not be the exact number, but it was a quoted number. And yet I'm deferring my mortgage payment, but that interest that I'm not paying now because I'm not paying the payment or the interest is going to have interest on it. So it's compounding. And they're mad about that. And I can see both camps. So I can see the person sitting there going, man, okay, well, thank God you're able to defer it, and that money's getting deferred, and they're a business, but their rationale was they're making $46 billion, give a break, but compound that over a lot of people. I think there's got to be a way to make something work, because by extension from that too, I don't own a property that I rent to anybody, but I've got a friend who had in Saskatchewan who was renting a property, has a tenant who hadn't paid their rent. They were already a month behind, and then this hit. And you can't evict. Apparently, you can't evict right now. So this hit, and now they're thinking, okay, they're not going to get rent out of this person for a number of months. And to add insult to injury, this person suddenly brought someone else in under the roof. So totally against the lease agreement, and they've brought someone there, but they can't kick them out. And so they've got a real big problem here. And they're not getting the revenue from those folks. And I'm saying, okay, but if you can defer your mortgage payments over here, that helps. I think people need to work together. I was talking to a friend of mine last Tuesday evening who does in the city here, and he's got a property, and he's been renting it for a number of years, and he actually contacted his tenant. He just said, look, I know it's a tough time right now. We're going to figure something out. He goes, I'm still working. The guy said, but next month it might be. He goes, we'll figure this out. Don't worry. I'm not kicking you out anywhere. We'll make it work. Because, as I said to this guy, is that, okay, you still own the property, but what if the furnace breaks down? You've got to pay for the furnace and whatnot. Fortunately, he's got the means that he could do that. He doesn't have to tap into the renter. But not everybody's in that situation. So it's, the whole scenario about what's going on, that comes back to my comment earlier about us working together. The unfortunate thing amongst many things, there are businesses that are going to fold. There are people that are going to lose out of this. The equally unfortunate thing is there are people that are going to capitalize on this in a not so nice way to take advantage of situations. And when there's a winner, there's going to be a loser somewhere attached to it when there's somebody winning. But you can also still, winning isn't just about the financial gain on and whatnot too. There's a lot of winners can come out of this by doing the right thing too. So and I hope people do.
Like there are definitely some companies who they may not get like a clear-cut victory. They might get a Pyrrhic victory of some sorts where they survived, but at what cost, right? Maybe they lost all their best employees, and with that, a mass exodus of knowledge, skill sets, stuff like that. Maybe they'll never be the same again. Maybe they rub some of their customers and clients the wrong way. There are like a million different possibilities, but one thing that you mentioned in particular that I feel like our viewers should definitely take home with them, take this all the way to the bank, you guys. You have to find a way to be collaborative, diplomatic, and find a way to get along, right? Whether you're the one with the power over another individual or entity, or the scenario is inverse. If you're willing to play ball, they're willing to play ball most of the time. Right? If you're reasonable, they'll be reasonable. I think like that's like a very key, important takeaway to have. Like sometimes, especially with like, as a young person, obviously it's not fair to generalize all young people, but I know sometimes like I do hear side comments here and there like, oh, well, why is this happening to me? Woe is me, my life, blah, 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 me. But it's not just you, right? It's the institutions, it's the government, it's the neighbors, it's the businesses. It's like, tough luck, pal. Like this is like a system-wide problem, right? We're in like a finite little blue ball hovering through space, right? Everybody's experiencing it. Unless you can get off the planet, like you're going to get affected
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form, right? So if you find a way to collaborate and get along with people, then maybe you will get away with this, right? And maybe you will find ways to be useful, thereby either retaining your position or finding other ways to contribute, leading to other opportunities. The world's your oyster, right? Like
Yep.
somebody once told me that uh, it was very cliche, but they said pandemics present an opportunity. So it really kind of tests people's mettle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's obviously not to say that the people who, unfortunately, they were let go or laid off or whatever, they lost their jobs. That doesn't mean they're not valuable individuals. That just means like, in that moment, they're being tested. And if you try to see an opportunity, you could turn this into an opportunity. Maybe it could lead to an application for grad school. Maybe it could lead to a new career.
Yeah.
Maybe it's an opportunity to clean up your entire house, do some home repairs and flip
100%.
a year later for 100 grand more. It could be so many opportunities, right? But it just comes down to how creative people are willing to be, right? So
Couldn't agree more. I so agree with you. And it's again, we're being dealt a certain deck of cards. How are we going to play them out? To be determined. One of the things that is fantastic about our community in Edmonton here is volunteering. Volunteering, and a lot of people don't know this piece of Edmonton. It's something we should be really proud of. And it's one of those things, they talk about the big apple and the big thing that we can hang out as a shingle. Edmonton is a hub and a community leader, a world leader in volunteerism. The National Volunteer Week that happens and we celebrate in our community is something that we should be very, very proud of. In 1978, when the Commonwealth Games came to Edmonton, that's when volunteerism really exploded in the city. It suddenly became something really big, and yes, it was a world event, but really big, and a lot of people got to get involved with it. And they came through that, and they wanted to continue that. They wanted to continue, and it got embedded into a culture of families and communities. So all this to say, even our own organization here at Science, we average about 240. I think it was 240 volunteers that we had active volunteers last year.
Oh wow!
Put in a huge amount of hours. We couldn't operate the way that we do when we're normally operating, if not for those volunteers. We have our staff, we have our unpaid volunteers, it's our unpaid staff. And but as a community as a whole, we do that. We volunteer, be it at these festivals and different events that are going on. People volunteer at the Oiler games to be able to help sell 50/50 tickets because then it's going to help the community event. But we do these things. Volunteer at schools, pick an event. We participate in charity events. People, by the core, want to help. People like to help. And one of the things that I have found in life is the easiest way to get somebody to help, ask them for help. Ask them to help you. Let them know, because people want to know their time is valued. And I don't know everything. I'm far from the smartest guy in the room. But I rely on all the people around me who really know what they're doing. I'm a big believer. You hire people to do a job, let them do their job. It's my responsibility to give them the tools and the leeway and the opportunities to do those things and engage when I can, but certainly learn from each and every one of them. And so by extension of that, when you ask people for help, you're giving them an opportunity to share their knowledge and their skills to make something better. And I guarantee when those people do that, they are so invested into what we're trying to do, you cannot go wrong. And it makes the world, a better place. It makes a business a better place, makes communities. So, so like you were saying, is the opportunity that can come out of this situation. It can be a lot of good out of it. Really, there really can be.
Actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to tell me, I'm going to try to see if we can get you to help out one of your favorite local businesses. So would you mind perhaps, just to keep, make it a bit, pivot towards, lighter side of things?
Yeah.
Would you mind telling us about your favorite restaurant or eatery in the city? And also, any other particular businesses that you feel like are doing something innovative, something different? Anybody that you want to kind of give a shout out to?
Well, favorite restaurant eatery. Well,
It could be an ice cream parlor. It could be.
Yeah, no. I'd almost be remiss if I didn't say my own home, because my wife was an amazing cook. And
that's too cliche, but
I know it's too cliche, but honestly, my friends know it. They know how lucky I am, because it's like I'm eating at a really good restaurant whenever I'm at home. my wife, like I said, she it's not her profession, but she loves cooking. She's really good at it. And so and especially if you come from a guy who can't cook worth a damn, me, and I can't. You know, it was amazing that my kids survived when I went through a divorce and I was a single parent. I'm surprised that they lived. But anyway, so you know, exclusive of that, from a restaurant perspective, yeah, we're fortunate to have a lot of really good restaurants in the city here. One of my personal favorites happens to be Bodega in the city, which is part of Saboran Bodega. And Chris, who runs that place, and he's got a location that's in my neighborhood. And things there, bacon wrap dates, nothing like the bacon wrap dates there. But you know, much like many other restaurants, and I'm a big fan of local restaurants that are locally run. They're doing the curbside, the pickup of dinners and things, and I give them a lot of credit. They've taken something different, and they've spun it differently. And there's an interesting thing on this. I was actually chatting with somebody about this the other day. Back late in 2019, early 2020, the news started to promote a lot about, or talk a lot about, what they were referring to as ghost restaurants. And ghost restaurants, I don't know if you heard about this. It was happening big in Vancouver and in Toronto. So just as a little side, we talk about these things because, and I say this because what was being talked about a lot then is happening at mass right now, effectively by definition. So ghost restaurants were restaurants that were closed, kitchens that were closed. So restaurants, it was happening in our own city here too. Restaurants were coming in, businesses were coming in, setting up shop, and they did not have any sit-down dining. Didn't exist, because they were coming in and taking an empty restaurant, these entrepreneurs, and wanting to cook out of the kitchen. And everything was skip the dishes or delivery. They did that. Now everybody's effectively following that model. So they don't have the other overhead, so they can extend some discount back to the patron. But so I'm really impressed with the way a lot of businesses are adapting to these things. I said earlier, and I'll do a big call out to Nigel and Kathy at Biabella in Edmonton here out in Highlands for what they've done, because again they started a neat little business 6 years ago and built a really good community following and community right at large. And they've taken their business where they had a lot, always this walk-in traffic, and they had this British candy store, we'll call it, novelty items, and they turned around and they had to put it online. They developed it. They took an online platform, created it, and developed it. And he told me the other day his walk-in traffic, his average tickets or average price, average sale, from his walk-in traffic was $20 and change average before all this. Now he's reaching almost $35. Like, remarkable, absolutely remarkable. So I said, why are you gonna even open your doors again? But half joking. But that's happening because there's me going online, and I got some time, so I'm gonna look around. Oh, I didn't know you had this, and all of a sudden I buy more stuff. So those that are adapting and changing over, and I know of some that aren't, and God bless them, and God wish them well that they adjust. And some businesses that will go unnamed right now that aren't adapting to these things, and one that I frequented a lot hasn't adapted, and they just figure they can just be, they're not all open, but they're open for business online, but you can't actually order anything. You have to just email us and see if we have anything on it. You're crazy. This is not going to work well for you in the long run. No. I think they're waiting for probably. It comes back to my comment about the competition, because their comment back to me when I talked about this was, well, our competition could turn around and see what we're doing. No, you're your biggest competition right now. The world of doing business has changed dramatically. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent there. So things that I love, and from an ice cream shop,
we'll have to have you on in a future episode as well, just to hear your thoughts on different restaurants. I feel like you have a lot of things that you've been thinking about.
yeah. But a little call out to Marcus ice cream place on White Avenue. Like taking my granddaughter there, my youngest daughter there, and my eldest daughter too. We go there quite a bit. And then the other one, I always get the name mispronounced, but it's Yellowed, I think is how you pronounce it. Yolode, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm going to say it wrong. I know I am. It's a little shop on White Avenue as well, right about, I'm going to say they're probably about 100th Street, give or take, and 102nd Street maybe. And a great little shop too. I love going in there. And again, run local business, and they do just a fantastic business that they're operating, and I wish all these places the best. I don't wish any ill on any business around the sea, but there's some really really cool, unique stuff that people are doing, and I'm loving seeing how people are adapting, and how and they're also looking as to how they can also help. And you know, was it Nando's? I saw them, they were providing meals to healthcare workers. And then and Love Pizza as well. Love that place. I love going to Love Pizza. And then, but I love also what they brought into the mix pretty quickly. So they were donating food to people, but they also gave an opportunity for me to make a donation to them to effectively buy pizza for healthcare workers or to other individuals. But I also appreciate, I got to say, because I have a lot of friends who are healthcare workers who have also commented saying, I appreciate the opportunity for a meal, but I don't need it. I'm still working. There are thousands of people out there who need it. Feed those people. So it's the great intentions of some of these businesses, and in this case here restaurants, have evolved by extension, and they've done a great thing. And then others have said, look, let's champion that and then put it back into the greater community. And I think that's really, really cool. So, and I guarantee you too, I shouldn't say guarantee you, but I'm pretty certain places like the food bank,
Yeah.
You know, that is a staple in much any community, and is so much needed right now. There are individuals who never in their wildest dreams would have ever imagined they would have to go to the food bank to receive food. And what I would really, and when I say I guarantee, what I really believe, because I believe in the human spirit so much, that when we come out of this, individuals who may never have given to the food bank before are going to give to the food bank when they come out of this and they're back to working, because they'll remember. People remember, you know, how close we used to, you know, often say, I'm only one paycheck away from disaster. People have now are living it and realizing, wow. And when they get back on their feet, they're going to go, I remember really well. I really remember, and I want to make sure that I'm giving back. And in our community, as I say, from volunteering to being philanthropic, giving of your time, energy, and financial resources, our community is really strong like that. You know, and we do pull together and we rally together, but people want to be able to help, and people want to be able to believe in something. People want to be able to champion and get involved with something that's proactive. And there's a lot of opportunity on that right now. And I really hope and I really believe that we're going to be able to have conversations in a year going, look at what cool stuff came out of this situation.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know, and I think it's going to be really amazing to see.
Some of like the biggest innovations, like many of the applications and stuff like that we have, like Airbnb and things like that, they actually happened during the 2007 2008 huge worldwide Great Recession, right? So
Yeah.
I feel like even right now, even including entrepreneurship, but even aside from that, in terms of innovation and giving, philanthropy, volunteerism, right? I feel like there are a lot of opportunities for people to get involved, and people. It's hard to kind of predict exactly what people will do, but I'm reasonably confident that at least with regards to many of the things that you've mentioned, especially with regards to giving back to their local communities, their local food bank, and other nonprofits, I feel like that will definitely increase. So
Yeah.
you can take that to the bank.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Steve, I don't want to take up too much of your time. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. Before we kind of disperse, I guess, if you will, for the night, I want to ask, like, is there any kind of message that you want to give out to the fans of Telus World of Science, or your friends, family, supporters, anybody at all that's kind of watching this right now?
You know, I'd say, you know, from the Telus World of Science aspect of things, you know, we're really fortunate that we have such a strong following. You know, we have an incredibly strong family and individual membership base here, and a good following from the schools, and we're really strongly supported by the community, and I love that fact. And we know when we reopen, people will come back here, and they will be excited to come back here, and I can assure them when they come back here, they're going to be loving to see how clean the place is, and also the evolution of it, because of some renovation stuff we're doing, and that we're going to be doing over the next couple of years' time. So, you know, and I'm very excited as well to see stuff that through our social media impact that we've been putting out there, how families have been also taking those, you know, at-home science experiences and then sharing them with others. I think that's really cool to see. It's really amazing to see. I love seeing that stuff. You know, from a community and a family standpoint of things, again, you know, I'm really proud of the city. I'm really proud of the people that that live in this city and as a community. I'm really proud of the businesses here, and of my friends and family, and having a lot of conversations with folks as to how they're dealing with this, and that they're very supportive of one another. And you know, I'm often saying to people, you know, stay safe and stay healthy. And it's interesting that is a key thing to be saying now, and be very respectful of. But we got to keep that in mind. We got to be good to each other, and remember how we can, you know, it's not just about us. It's about how us becomes, making it about us is by finding out how we can do better, do better to the community, and how we can do better for others, because it comes back in spades, you know. And again, that's a big reason why I'm proud of the city, and I can't wait to walk onto the Folk Festival Hill, which probably won't be until 2021, but when I can walk into there, when I can go to the Fringe, when I can go to the Street Performers Festival, when I can go to the Deep Freeze Festival, when I can go to an Oiler game and an Eskimo game, when I can walk down the street, and when I can hug a friend, a family member, and not be afraid. And I am so looking forward to that. But you know, if any message, say thank you. Say thank you to people. Thank people for what they're doing. Thank people for the time they're giving you. Thank the people that are working, and acknowledge their sacrifices and everything that they're doing to help, you know, the world keep moving along now too. And look in the mirror and thank yourself for being, you know, standing up and being right about it too. So.
Steve Baker, everybody, COO of the Telus World of Science in Edmonton. To learn more about him and like some of the amazing, fascinating things that he's working on, check them out on all social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it, they are probably there. Thank you so much for taking time out of your arduous and busy schedule to, you know, join myself in this little cozy conversation. And yeah, I look forward to staying in touch. Definitely send me some of those links. I'm really interested in learning about some of that stuff.
I certainly will. It's been a real pleasure. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity to have a discussion. Take care of yourself, stay healthy, and stay safe.
That's the motto for 2020: stay safe and stay healthy. Yeah. Or, you know, if it was the year 2100, live long and prosper.
Well done. Well done. Okay. All the best. Take care.
Bye.